Your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit, brings you front and center to a crisis unfolding in real time. In April 2025, a 145% tariff on Chinese imports slammed U.S. ports into silence. $14 billion in cargo vanished, leaving docks deserted and store shelves eerily bare. The Port of Los Angeles looks like a ghost town, and retailers are scrambling to stretch dwindling inventories. As panic quietly builds behind the scenes, the nation faces more than just delays. It's staring down a potential supply chain breakdown. Let's dive into the key developments of this economic standoff and what it means for everyday Americans. Port chaos, unleashed on the waterfront. The Port of Los Angeles, America's heavyweight in Pacific trade, has taken a direct hit. Cargo volume is projected to plunge by 35% year over year, according to Executive Director Gene Soroka. The slowdown isn't a traffic jam, it's a traffic stop. Major shipping lines like Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd are pulling back, canceling sailings or redirecting vessels altogether. More than 80 scheduled sailings to the West Coast were axed in April alone, with more turbulence forecasted for May. At China's export terminals, containers are piling up like abandoned shopping carts. Some ships skip U.S. stops entirely, while others float idle, waiting on uncertain instructions. This isn't like the pandemic-era backlog caused by safety protocols. This is a full-blown, policy-triggered freeze that's hitting cranes, customs officers, and trucking firms right where it hurts. Dock workers are facing reduced shifts. Cranes that once danced through steel containers now sit dormant. Even Gulf and East Coast ports are feeling the chill. Though slightly more diversified in origin, they're now juggling rerouted cargo, delayed customs clearances, and thinner loads. The Northwest Seaport Alliance flagged that incoming freight is down up to 30%, and some exporters are scrambling to pull back containers on canceled orders. When half of LA's port traffic is historically tied to China, the ripple is more like a shockwave, and what's piling up at the ports is already vanishing from retail shelves. Retailers scramble as stockpiles shrink. Retailers across the U.S. are feeling the squeeze as tariffs throttle imports from China. Companies like Walmart and Target, which rely heavily on Chinese goods, are reporting major supply chain disruptions. The National Retail Federation expects import cargo volume to drop by 20% in the second half of 2025. With shipments frozen, retailers are burning through inventory fast. According to Gene Soroka, most big-box stores have only 5 to 7 weeks of stock left. Consumers may not face empty shelves, but they'll see fewer choices and rising prices. Smaller businesses are hit hardest. Jay Foreman, CEO of toy maker Basic Fun, warns that missing seasonal shipments, especially for holidays, can turn valuable inventory into losses overnight. Inventory planning has become a high-stakes balancing act. Companies are rethinking sourcing strategies, but switching suppliers mid-season is costly and time-consuming. Big retailers might weather the storm, but smaller ones are trapped between rising costs and shrinking margins. Shoppers are already noticing fewer options in clothing, home goods, and electronics. Prices remain mostly stable for now, but experts say increases are on the way if the standoff continues. For U.S. retailers, this trade war is rewriting the rulebook on inventory, and Q3 looks rocky. Quick pit stop. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, hit that subscribe button to stay updated with more vehicle news, supply chain shakeups, and trade drama. Back to the story. The pain doesn't stop at retail. Let's shift gears to the broader economic toll. A downshift in the broader economy. The $14 billion cargo gap and aggressive tariffs are now weighing heavily on the broader U.S. economy. GDP dipped by 0.3% in Q1 2025, the first contraction since 2020, signaling a slowdown in post-pandemic momentum. Transportation is among the hardest hit. With West Coast ports stalling, trucking routes and rail freight have seen volumes plunge. Logistics companies are reducing hours, downsizing fleets, and furloughing staff. If container traffic doesn't rebound soon, layoffs could spread to warehouses and retail hubs. Manufacturers, especially in the auto sector, are grappling with rising costs for components like electronics and interior modules. These increases are gradually showing up in consumer prices, fueling inflation in durable goods. Uncertainty over the tariff timeline is also freezing business plans. Companies are shelving expansions, delaying hiring, and slashing capital investments. Confidence that had rebounded post-COVID is now faltering. With inflation, stalled investment, and choked trade flows, the U.S. economy is in a delicate balance. Even if tariffs were reversed today, recovery would take months. For now, the economic engine is sputtering, and there's no quick fix in sight. That's why many companies are rethinking where and how they source their goods. Supply chain shakeup. Can anyone replace China? With China-bound shipments grinding to a halt, U.S. companies are racing to diversify their supply chains. Southeast Asian nations like Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia are top alternatives, but scaling up to China's volume is proving difficult. Vietnam's factories are overwhelmed, ports are clogged, and labor is stretched thin. Thailand faces quality control issues as demand surges. These nations lack the polished efficiency and scale that China built over decades. Shifting supply chains isn't fast or cheap. The full transition, sourcing vendors, ensuring compliance, managing freight, can take 1 to 2 years. Meanwhile, companies face higher costs, customs delays, and backlogged shipments due to limited cargo capacity. Some in the tech and auto industries are eyeing reshoring to the U.S., but high labor costs and red tape limit feasibility. Even with political support, domestic manufacturing works mainly for high-margin or highly automated sectors. For companies using just-in-time logistics, even minor delays disrupt entire production lines. While supply chain diversification adds resilience, it comes at the cost of speed and efficiency. The pivot away from China is underway, but it's a long and bumpy road. And while companies scramble behind the scenes, the future of global trade remains murky. Unpredictable roads and the future of trade. The U.S. China trade relationship remains stuck in neutral. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has labeled the tariffs unsustainable, yet no clear resolution is in sight. Beijing has stayed mostly silent, likely waiting for political or corporate pressure in the U.S. to shift the tide. This gridlock has created what economists now call structural volatility. Retailers can't plan reliably, and manufacturers are hedging their bets, juggling two costly strategies, one for prolonged tariffs, the other for a potential rollback. Capital spending is down, and R&D budgets are being diverted into inventory stockpiles and risk buffers. Consumers are already feeling the squeeze. Choices are narrowing, fewer product options, limited seasonal releases, and prices are ticking upward, particularly in electronics, clothing, and furniture. Labor is under stress too. Warehouse hours are shrinking, hiring freezes are spreading, and prolonged disruption could lead to job cuts. Worse yet, global partners are watching. If the U.S. appears unstable in trade policy, countries may pivot toward the EU or Asia-Pacific alliances. This standoff risks permanently reshaping global supply chains, and if diplomacy stalls, the U.S. may find itself sidelined in the very system it once led. So what's the bottom line from all this disruption? Conclusion: gears of change. The $14 billion cargo freeze wasn't just a supply chain snag. It was a full-scale disruption that's now echoing across America's ports, retail shelves, and boardrooms. Silent cranes, vanishing shipments, and economic hesitation are now defining a moment where policy collides head-on with production. As manufacturers recalculate, retailers brace for shortages, and supply chains look beyond China, one thing's certain: the gears of global trade are grinding through a major transition. The choices made now, by businesses and policymakers alike, will define the next chapter of commerce and competition. Now we turn it over to you. Should the U.S. hold the line on tariffs or rev up talks with China? Can Southeast Asia realistically fill China's role in global manufacturing? Is reshoring back to the U.S. a smart move, or just wishful thinking? Sound off in the comments. We want to hear from the gearheads, strategists, and weekend wrenchers alike. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Piston Pundit, your ultimate pit stop for real-time vehicle updates, industry shifts, and what's next on the global road ahead. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's plenty more to explore.